This podcast is for information purposes only and is not and should not be construed as professional advice or an offer or commitment by any Rabobank Group member to enter into a transaction. The views expressed by the presenter and or guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of Rabobank. Please see the podcast description for our full disclaimer. Welcome to RaboTalk's Growing Our Future, where we talk to experts from both here in New Zealand and across the world to bring New Zealand farmers and growers the information they need to make informed strategic decisions about the future direction of their business to ensure they continue to thrive in a fast-changing world. Shifting expectations around environmental performance, growing regulatory complexity, and increasing pressure to demonstrate real-world outcomes are reshaping how land is managed across New Zealand. For farmers and land managers, the challenge isn't just understanding what needs to change, it's knowing where to start, what to prioritise, and how to make progress in a way that's practical, durable, and grounded in their own context. I'm your host, Blake Holgate, and today we're diving into what it takes to build capacity across the natural resource management sector. We'll explore how farmers can take a more structured approach to managing their land and how to navigate uncertainty while continuing to run resilient, productive businesses. And helping us to unpack that is someone who has spent more than 2 decades working at the intersection of strategy, land management and sector capability. I'm joined by Matt Highway, Chief Executive of the New Zealand Association of Resource Management. With over 25 years experience in catchment, biodiversity and land management, Matt brings a clear, pragmatic perspective on how to prioritise, action and support collaboration and deliver meaningful outcomes on the ground. Matt, welcome to Growing Our Future podcast.
G'day, Blake. Thanks for having me.
Matt, can you start by telling us about, your journey into natural resource management and what led you to your current role as CEO of New Zealand Association of Resource Management?
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Really good to see you. I guess probably like many people, my career wasn't particularly well planned. It was a series of fortunate kind of mistakes or opportunities, I guess. I actually started in the military before completing my science education, then worked at regional council, sort of hydrology, ecology, and really enjoyed the science. But I guess the turning point really for me getting to what I currently do was going to a conference and seeing a bunch of professionals working with farmers, working on awesome projects like restoration, solving practical problems, and doing really awesome things that were meaningful at a place. And I just thought, yeah, that's definitely the career for me. So I guess since then I spent the last sort of couple of decades, as you said, honing my craft in that area. And of course, the more I learn, the more I realise I don't know. But through that anyway, about 8 years, I stayed at Waikato Regional Council, a wonderful place at the time. Another 8 years of dairy sector, but right the way through, and then probably more than 8 years now as a consultant, right the way through doing integrated catchment management and land management stuff as well, which I love, and had the opportunity to work with some cool people, do some innovative tools and solutions along the way, and a bit of research. And I guess our profession, because it's really focused on not just environmental stuff, but sustainability and resilience and working with people and businesses, that transition into the CEO of NZARM was just a great opportunity I couldn't pass up. So, yeah, that was why I sort of went down that path 5 years ago. But yeah, time flies when you're having fun. I mean, you're probably, how long have you been at Rabobank now?
13 years now, Matt,
13.
and because for a lot of those we've worked in conjunction with you and in the New Zealand Association of Resource Management at various times, and a number of crossovers and intersections that work really well for both organisations.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've really loved the opportunity to work with yourself. You're the only bank that we work with, but researchers and a whole bunch of other partners as well. It's been awesome.
Now, for those listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the New Zealand Association of Resource Management and what you do, what role do you play across the sector?
Well, I'll just start at the beginning. I guess we're fundamentally a membership organisation for professionals, people working in what we used to call kind of natural resource management, and now kind of more commonly integrated catchment management or nature-based solutions. And we have a bunch of people, we have farmers in a membership, farm consultants, catchment coordinators, lots of council people, policymakers, scientists. So yeah, we have this group of professionals really, and we've been around since 1953. Started off as the Soil Conservation Society of New Zealand. So that's the same year that Tenzing Norgay and Sir Ed summited Everest. So we've been around a long time. And an equally important moment, I suppose, in New Zealand history was the formation of NZARM. But, we have been around a long time and we've morphed a lot. We've got this big sort of general remit, but we kind of sit specifically in capability building and looking after people, connecting people, networks, creating partnership. About 4 or 5 years ago, we really changed our strategy to focus on that rather than getting away from advocacy a little bit. We wanted to be politically neutral and just be supportive of farming, businesses, the environment, and sit in a really neutral space rather than advocate for this really broad industry that we had. Yeah, so I guess the role that we play is in that capability building. I guess probably the thing I'm most proud of is our capability building project that we had with the MFE, and which included capability software. So now in New Zealand, which is freely available to people, we can find out where people are in the country, who they are, and also what sort of skill set they have. And that was really driven around freshwater farm planning at that time. But it can be useful across a range of environmental skills. But essentially our philosophy is, building better people equals sort of a better society and better decisions and, better businesses.
So in terms of that capability, I forget how did you refer to it, Matt, database or source, is that something that anyone can access?
It is. It's part of that. It was free for several years. We've had to make it part of our membership now, which is $100 membership. But I'd encourage people to sort of give it a go. It's free for a certain amount of time. Give that a crack. And particularly if you're a professional in this area, but if you're a farmer with a side job like a catchment coordinator or something like that, anything to do with the environment, I encourage you to have a look. And it is focused on a couple of things. One is really assessing where you're at and where you'd like to go and filling in some of the gaps. So showing you which sort of courses you might want to take or who you might want to connect with, who around you is doing something similar. So it's designed to be useful, but it is really for members at this stage.
And it's really about upskilling you and connecting you to others that maybe have the insights or knowledge or connections that you need in your role or in the project you're working in.
Yeah, spot on. And organisations as well, so we can aggregate. So, for example, Rabobank might be interested in, they might have a project around land management or restoration or nutrient management or whatever it might be. You can use this tool to find the right people in the right area with the right skills as well. So that's super useful too. But yeah, primarily about looking after individuals and helping them upskill.
Yeah, it sounds like a great initiative.
Yeah,
hey, Matt, so you've spent, as we said a few times now, 25 years working in catchment, biodiversity and land management. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen over that time that, farmers today really need to be aware of or cognizant of?
Yeah, doesn't feel like 25 years. You're probably the same with your 13 years at Rabobank. It goes fast when you're enjoying what you do. I'd say the biggest change is in technology. This is probably the most obvious answer, really, with especially the last couple of years for the obvious stuff, AI. Everyone probably mentions that. But we've also got access to bigger data sets too. And for example, not everyone would know this, but I suppose we've got satellites going across the country every sort of 7 days, collecting a huge amount of data that's publicly available. So there's a lot of that where you can use remote sensing, artificial intelligence, these huge data sets. And it enables us to measure stuff quite cheaply that we definitely couldn't measure it 20 years ago, couldn't probably measure it 5 years ago. So the challenge probably isn't really technology. It's always been the same, which is around how to apply the technology, being practical, getting these tools into everyday sort of use, really. I guess the second thing I noticed quite a bit as far as change goes, over the last few years, in the environment anyway, we've focused on quite a few silver bullets. So people are really focused on individual solutions or solutions looking for a problem. And in my field, you might think of things like, which I researched a bit too, things like constructed wetlands, bioreactors, detention bunds, all those edge of field tools. They sound really cool and shiny and exciting to solve a water quality problem, but they have to be used in the right context. So I'm seeing a real growing change there of people trying to get these one-stop solutions. Yeah, but I guess the biggest thing is that there hasn't been a huge amount of change fundamentally as well, right? So by and large, our land management programs across different regions are the same. They fund the same. They have the same people working in them and the same approaches. And this, if you think about something like SLUI, which is the Horizons program, amazing really, like of 20 years of working with farmers, they can really see massive change over 2 decades. And it's quite comforting to know that it's the same process. It had good goals, and we can really communicate sort of successes for that program as well. But I guess at the moment, we do need to start looking at, what else can we do? How can we mesh these two things, these long-term programs together, and be a bit smarter around using technology to guide that investment?
So you mentioned technology and the development of sort of these silver bullets or kind of one-off interventions as, potential solutions. From your experience, Matt, what's sort of been the level of engagement with the farmers and landowners around the development of those solutions? And why I ask is a couple of recent podcasts we've had researchers on, and some of the key findings some of the key insights, have been too often we don't start with the farmer or landowner and work backwards. We, as I think you probably alluded to, we start with the solution and then almost are kind of retrospectively trying to impose that or give that to the farmer as a solution. And I wonder at times if that's where a gap or failing has come in the system.
Yeah, I love that. And whoever said that is bang on the money. We often, especially if you're a researcher or something, and I've been in that field, we want something that's shiny and exciting, you want to go for that. But I guess the fundamental thing is it's not whatever we're doing, whether it's banking or environment or farm planning, it's not actually about us, is it? It's about solving a solution for particularly a community or a rural community or a farmer. And we want to make sure that we're doing that correctly. So I've seen an increasing, really cool approach of bringing farmers into research teams over the last few years, which I think is going to just help a lot. And I know funders are asking for that more and more as well, which is really cool. But it doesn't matter what we're doing, the outcome is the thing we're after, whether it's an environmental outcome or a sustainability outcome or a well-being outcome or animal welfare outcome. That's what we should be focusing on rather than the widget that we're using. So yeah, I really like that comment.
So if we do start with the farmer, where should a farmer be starting if they do want to take a more structured approach to managing their land and environmental impact? Because again, time and time we see or hear, farmers are making a difference, want to make more of a positive difference, but often don't know what that next step is to take them from where they are to what the next iteration looks like.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, probably completely different in the banking sector. From my point of view, it's really about sort of understanding risk, or maybe this is the same as banking, understanding risk before jumping to a solution. I don't know. What do you think? Does that align?
So it sounds very, very similar to banking, I'd say, Matt. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So if you think about, a couple of things, let's go through like resilience, like you said, which part of the farmers are most vulnerable, or what aspects are the most vulnerable, which paddocks are the most prone to flooding, or where is soil being lost, where is runoff occurring. That's going to be a big one, and of course in freshwater farm plans around critical source areas. So where are these biggest kind of risks, or where is drought occurring, and then what are the things I can do to make the biggest difference to alleviate that risk? And I guess if you ask yourself, if I'm only going to invest in one thing, you always probably pick the biggest risk and what will make the biggest difference for the least amount of cost or investment. So of course it's still around return on investment, to use a banking term, but just an environmental aspect. And of course I work in, I call it strategy all the time, but the biggest part of a strategy is not deciding what to do, but half the time it's deciding what not to do. So make sure you really focus your effort would be my advice.
Often we hear about the importance of, measuring and monitoring performance on farm to help make better decisions and track and demonstrate progress. And that leads to the natural next question. Well, what exactly is it that I need to be measuring and monitoring? Any thoughts on that, Matt?
That's a tough one. And, we've gone down a few different pathways over the years of let's measure our stream before it enters the property and when it exits. And then the bit in between is my problem. And of course, the natural environment isn't quite that simple. And I know things like that were actually built into regulation some time ago. So understanding that is really important. When you're measuring and monitoring, I think that fortunately nowadays we've got wonderful farm plans, and farm plans have to fit inside a catchment context. So context is probably the most fundamental thing to understand before measuring anything. For example, downstream, you might have a significant water body, let's say a lake. The drivers of that might be nitrogen or it might be phosphorus. So understanding that if I do something for E. coli because of my soils and those sorts of things, it might not have an impact in my catchment context. Or if I'm off on a tangent somewhere else around planting trees in different places. So it depends on the context completely. So measuring and monitoring should really focus on those outcomes again. On your property, if you've got a farm plan and it's giving effect to catchment context, those things should be stacked at the top. And then you can start measuring, well, okay, did I plant X amount of trees on a riverbank because I know that that's where my sediment is coming from, or am I managing my land a bit differently, or my fertilizer application, or my pasture differently to mitigate nitrogen. So it's really, those should be stacked at the top. And if we're doing a really good job at catchment scale, those actions that farmers are taking should be able to be added up to show impacts.
Yeah, so I suppose it's about measuring what's important to you and your context, probably paired with, what's easily available and accessible to measure and monitor, because you don't want to be spending, the bulk of your time figuring out how you're going to measure and monitor something if it's going to take away from just doing the action, I assume.
That's such a good point. Yeah, we spend a lot of time and energy on monitoring, and if you put water quality monitoring on in the spotlight, it might take 5 years before you get a meaningful result and a lot of money. So if you can work with a community group or a regional council who already understands the drivers and where to go, then your money might be better spent on actions. Having said that, if you're spending money on actions that are in the wrong direction without understanding the risk and the catchment context, then that's equally a very inefficient way to go.
Potentially talking of inefficiencies, regulations, they appear to be, constantly changing. And I know that is a frustration for many farmers. What is your advice to farmers trying to, navigate that uncertainty while still progressing their business and making environmental gains at the same time?
I loved your initial comment. Speaking of inefficiencies, yeah, we've gone up and down a bit, haven't we, over the last few years? Yeah, I assume your customers are feeling that as well. Look, my take on this might be unpopular in some places, but popular in others is, regulations do change. They will change. Governments will change, of course. Implementation practices kind of get tweaked a little bit as well, but the outcomes we're after have not changed my whole career. We're still, from an environmental point of view, we're still after healthy soils, clean water, safe drinking water, swimming, and these Kiwi ideals that we have. That's really what we're after, and including in that equally profitable businesses and healthy people. So I would encourage people, if you're focusing on those outcomes, I think you're going to be pretty safe rather than reacting to policy announcements or trying to second guess what's coming down the pipeline. So if you're making sensible investments, and farmers know exactly what this is, especially those ones that have been around some time, around resilience, environment. It's mostly around fresh water, isn't it? Climate change, greenhouse gas emissions. You're going to be pretty well placed when policy, no matter what it is, hits. If I've got a moment, I might just, and I'll look straight into the camera, but from my message to policymakers on this one would be, please scenario test your environmental regulation, because we want to make sure that we are not getting perverse outcomes, we're getting good outcomes, and that we've tested it through, going back to your comment earlier, Blake, which I really like, we're testing it through farmers as well to make sure it's pragmatic and it's going to work. And we might just, if the more that we work together, we might just learn something and get regulations that are needed, but spot on as well and real pragmatic.
Yeah, and to be fair, most of the conversations I have with farmers and with guests aren't actually anti-regulation, they're anti-bad regulation. So it's not the concept of regulation itself. I think there's just a sense that perhaps we've got it wrong a few times, and it's meant we haven't been able to head in the direction that we all want to.
That's such a good point. Like, I can't remember who pointed it out to me, but, the seatbelt regulation, right? Like, it's all regulation isn't bad. That's obviously a fantastic thing that saves lives. And some regulation is of course needed. I really like what you said there. Yeah, thanks, Blake.
Yeah, so maybe the best way to future-proof operations for farmers is, as you say, Matt, just focus on the outcomes. Again, the context of your farm. What are your risks? What are the outcomes you need to achieve? And that's probably the best way to protect against future policy and environmental pressures. Not necessarily foolproof, because again, regulations can sometimes do silly things. But again, if you can't control the future and what they look like, you keep coming back to what you can control, and they're still controlling those outcomes that are relevant to your farming environment.
Yeah, that's right. Focus on the controllables and keep in touch with your industry bodies too, right? Because they'll keep their finger on the pulse and be able to communicate it really well too. Yeah.
It's probably a good segue there, Matt. Farmers don't operate in isolation. What role should collaboration play in farm planning? We talk about identifying your risks and what are your drivers on farm and your catchment contexts, etc., etc. But there's actually quite a lot involved in that. Who are the players and who can help farmers and guide them through that?
Yeah. And full disclaimer, I did work for Dairy NZ for many years, which I think is a great organisation. So these industry bodies have obviously got a huge role to play, but collaboration is critical, right? None of us are smarter than all of us. So the more information that we have, the better decisions we can make, the more support we can have. I know, the research tells us that information spreads really well, and trusted information from farmer to farmer as well. So those networks, those farming networks, are probably the most important thing. A little plug for what I do, I would suggest people join their local catchment group as well, because it's not just about environmental goals, but social goals and networking and learning as well. So, and I guess, just throughout my career, I realized that there's not many new challenges as well. So someone's probably already solved the problem that you're facing. So the more that we can touch base and collaborate, the more we can find out about these things. And I guess with going back to technology, with AI, we can just ask ChatGPT who's solved it and how to get in touch with them, or what the solution is too.
Do you think that's in part why we've seen such an uptake of catchment groups and the success of catchment groups across the country, Matt, because of that kind of peer-to-peer learning?
Absolutely. I used to use the 80-20 rule all the time, because I did mostly science. I was like, 20% science, which was probably very generous, and then 80% community. I'm more thinking it's actually more like 99% community and connections and 1% science. So do myself out of a job there, because I'm only, 1% what I used to be of 20%. So, it's crucial. And catchment groups are growing for that reason. It does help set catchment context, understand where you're going from an environmental point of view, connect to expertise. That's where funding is often channeled as well. So, I would recommend working with a catchment group as much as possible, and just a little thank you to all of those coordinators out there that are working as volunteers a lot of the time, although some of them are paid now, to pull those communities together and do awesome stuff.
In your role, have you seen some, real practical examples of, good wins that catchment groups have? Because, we hear so much about the great work that catchment groups do, and they do great work, but it's always good to specifically hone down into, this is a tangible example of what was achieved. I'm sure you've seen many of those examples in your time, Matt? Yeah,
there's heaps, and there's a lot at many levels. So some of them are becoming quite a political force as well. And if you think about catchment collectives that are regionally focused, they're quite powerful in a nice way, powerful kind of entities that can be a voice for a farmer. If you think about Tuki, that's one of their goals, being a voice for a farmer, but also providing training and practical tools and clarity around what we should be doing in those catchments. So I think it's really cool. So yeah, I've seen heaps of things from research on bioreactors through to catchment scale modelling. Some of the things like erosion control modelling is more sophisticated than what we have in regional councils. So really good information gathering, heaps of water quality monitoring, which is again outstripping some of our national bodies, our councils and our central government. So these groups are building a huge amount of information and generally keeping it within the community. But some of the coolest things I've seen is just the social cohesion. One group in Kaipara is doing an amazing job with just having community dinners. So the nearest town is sort of village, really is half an hour away from this catchment community. So they're focusing around the fire station, having social events and talking that way. So I think it's a great catalyst for lots of really positive things in a rural environment. And again, go join one.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely well put. Well put. If you were sitting down with a farmer, Matt, today, you're reviewing their land, what are the first three questions you'd put to them? They've come to you, they've said, look, really, really keen to step it up a gear on my environmental performance. I need to run a sustainable, profitable business. To do that, where do I start? What are the first three questions you ask them?
Well, firstly, it's good that you're in the front door having a cup of tea, able to ask questions. But I guess it's going back to what we were saying before about widgets and solutions looking for a problem. It's kind of asking and understanding, isn't it? So it would be something like, what does success look like for you? Would be the first question, really understanding, I guess the next one would be where you want your farm or your business to be in the next few years. But also socially and family-wise, what sort of lifestyle do you want your family to live or provide for your family as well? And the reason for doing that from a land management perspective is most of the actions that you can prescribe or recommend can have multiple outcomes. So whether it's an environmental thing to feel more compliant and take the stress away, or whether it's more resilience to reduce the impact of landslides or flooding, those sorts of things, it can meet those multiple goals around what your longer term aspirations are. So that would be where I would start. I'd love to hear what you think or, from what your business managers do, but something like that, being open and honest and building that relationship.
Well, what I really like, Matt, and this is consistent with what we would do as well, is actually understanding the farmer's needs. What is it that drives you? It's not coming to you and saying, hey, the catchment is identified, there's a water quality issue here, and we suspect that you're a source of nitrogen or phosphorus, and we need you to do X, Y, and Z. It's actually around, again, putting the farmer first. What do you want to achieve here? It is your business. It is your land. There's lots of stuff we can do in it to address maybe the environmental challenges that you've got. But first and foremost, it's what's important to you. Because if it's not important to you, the odds of you getting on and actioning it and doing the hard yards over multiple years and sticking at it when it's not that fun or not that easy or not that cost effective are pretty low. But if it's moving you towards your goals and desires, there's a much higher chance of engagement and action. So I suspect it's very similar to exactly the three questions that you laid out.
I absolutely love that. Yep, and I think most people that I talk to are doing something similar. So we've got a great, bunch of farm consultants or, regional council professionals. And obviously the banking sector is very good at working with people in their goals. So, yeah, I love it.
Okay, so what's the one practical step we can leave our listeners with? You're a farmer next 6 to 12 months. What can they do to make a improvement? It doesn't necessarily have to be a big leap forward. Just in a year's time, they're further ahead than they are now. Any practical steps they can take, Matt?
Well, it'd be wrong of me to suggest a widget, wouldn't it, by this stage of the conversation? So I won't do that. So I'll just say I would recommend being part of a catchment group, I guess a social thing rather than an actual go plant trees thing. And probably the reason for doing that is it will help with regulations. It probably is the highest return on investment you can make actually joining those groups. There'll be money funneling through catchment groups, so you might be able to get access to plants or expertise. You can stay informed, of regulations. But probably most importantly, you'll be working in context of the catchment too. So, and do something that's exciting. So I think regulations and farm planning has been really focused on things like, your nitrogen number is too high, it must come down, and these are the actions to put in place. No one gets excited about an NLOS number, right? But if you're in a catchment context, then you want to, improve the number of bittern or giant cockapoo or tui flying around or the amount of trees or the amount of pests taken out of your forests. That's way more exciting, and you're still doing something for your environment that's really positive. So sorry, long answer is, connect with your local catchment group if there is one. Yep. Thanks, Blake.
Well, that's probably a pretty good place to leave it. Hey, really enjoyed catching up again. And Matt, as I said at the start, we've had a really strong and good relationship over a number of years now, and really enjoy working with you and the broader NZARM or New Zealand Association of Resource Management network. It's great work that you guys do. You really is sort of the front line of a lot of this land management work that goes on across the country, and a lot of our landowners and farmers really in one way or another often lean on you and your members and what they do. So really appreciate it, and look forward to continuing to liaise with you and work with you and the members.
Thank you, Blake, and thank you, Rabobank. I think you're doing an amazing job. I really enjoy the podcast, and it's a pleasure to be on. All the best.
Thank you for listening to RaboTalk's Growing Our Future podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how Rabobank can support you to succeed into the future, please go to rabobank.co.nz.